I'm not exactly sure why. This tends to take longer and longer and longer every time I start. But it's true, and it's a little frustrating because I should be getting more efficient at this, not less so. Hey, this cartoon ape is in a jungle. We make games as well as play games. And so, like the schedule says, we are going to talk about game design because our whole thing is anyone can do this. Let's start with dispelling the myths of what game design is. We did that before. We're moving on. We talk about what game designers actually do, and we moved on from there to say you can make this. Let's start simple. Let's make a simple game. And the game we came up with, we've designed here. And then there's another series. Like this series is Design Chat. We take over the just chatting category and chat about design. That's where we designed this game to begin with, because we start very simple and say these are the only elements you need. You can do this. And then in our other series, Design Workshop, we used that design and we started creating things and put it together into this game that we are currently making. It's a very simple game. Nothing fancy. And by the way, there is a game down below. It's slightly more fancy. It's not the AAA game you would buy for $60 or something, but it is a game. In fact, it's a game for chat, and you can play right now with chat commands. It's called Small Towers. Go for it. It's an example of a game that we can make. In fact, the kinds of things the little critters do down there, the little marauders and archers, the engineers, the flag waving, all of this stuff is right in line with what we're doing with our little game. What is that little game, you might ask? Well, okay, fair question. In this series, Design Chat, we did design a game, and we're working on it in both this series to work on the rules of the game, and then we implement the rules of the game in the other series, Design Workshop. So we spend about an hour, try to keep it real simple, try to keep it small enough that it's just a small step you can do too, right? Because, let's face it, this isn't much. I just drew a square, right? No big deal. You could do that. You can draw these arrows. You can imagine this square is controlled by the player with W, A, S, and D and can move, right? This is how we started. In fact, we used the design process and continued to improve this and said, you know what, a square is okay, but let's make it cute. And now it's a character that the player can identify with. Cool. And we said, well, we need to win, so let's make a space where the player can move into and win. Well, long story short, we've done this. This is actually looking pretty good. Check. And now we're here. We're in the process of making this win square thing work, which is to say, you put this together so the player has control. You put this together so the player can win. And by the way, this also shrinks. And if it's gone, then they cannot win. In other words, they lose. They can restart. Player accepts these rules. Well, that's a game. It's a very simple game. It's a very simple game. In fact, we have to come up with a title for this thing pretty soon. It's a very simple game, right? But it has all the elements we need. A modest amount of player control, a way to win and a way to lose, because this win square will go away after a time. So you can lose, you can win. There's a modest amount of player control. Player accepts these rules. Cool. That's a game. See? It's easy. Well, let's look at that. Because the other series, Design Workshop, has been working hard on this. It's good. We have the Unity game engine, we have some scripts, and yes, there's code involved, but we don't have to do code today. It's fine. Instead, what we can do is look at what we have. This is our little character, and this is right now representing the win square, because while the character looks pretty good right now, kind of follows all the rules that we prescribed for this character, the win square is still in development and really has a list of rules we still want to do. Two of the rules are that when it starts at some size and is not running. And then another rule is when the game is running, we're going to shrink the square. Two other rules are in place. One is if it gets too small, like smaller than the character, then we will make this disappear and you will lose. We will also stop the game because there is this condition we've realized. Like right now we're playing and the character can move, but this is not what it's going to be. You can't just run over here and win before the game starts. That's not going to be okay. So we're going to stop this character from running as well. But there'll be this moment where the player sees, oh, I can get there, right? We'll have to really tell the player what's going on. They need to understand what we know, which is you are this character, and this character helps to explain that. We can tell the player you can move with your keyboard keys, up, down, left, right is WASD. I mean, we have to tell them this. That's their player control. They're going to ask, who am I, where am I? And this sort of explains it. The eyes really help, yeah? What am I trying to do? Well, we need to say, like, this is the goal. I need to tell them that. And they're going to ask, well, what do I have working for me? And it's like, well, you can move. Get there. And what do I have working against me? And it's like, well, this is going to shrink. In fact, we need to communicate some details now. If we say, like, well, right now you can't move, player, and frankly, you can't tell them, hey, player, move with WASD. We can't tell them that if, in fact, they can't move. If we're preventing them from moving, we can't tell them that. And yet we do need to tell them that is what's going to happen when we play. Right? Like, you're going to do this. Ready, set, go. In fact, ready, set, go might make a lot of sense. Because we say, you're going to play this game, ready, set, go. And as soon as you see the word ready, you might be clued into the idea that you can't yet go. See what I did there? So there's some things we want to communicate to the player, and there's a set of, a feature that we've been talking about, a set of features, I guess, set of rules, that will have to be all about communicating to the player what's going on, including, like, the name of the game, including ready, set, go, including use WASD, including you have to get to this win square to win, right? Because once they do that, right, then they'll know how to play. But before then, the player will not know how to play. We need to be extremely sensitive to that. So there's a set of features we're going to have to do just for what is called user experience design, or UX design. It is often confused with UI design, or user interface design, because typically user interface design isn't just about the input keys, WASD, although that is definitely part of the user interface. It is often just thought of as the stuff on the screen that we display. Buttons, labels, HUD, menu, which is also interface. And looking at the pretty graphics of that is cool. But user experience design could be thought of as what they call a superset. A larger topic that includes game design. Game design is a form of user experience design, but so is filmmaking, so is writing, so is art. Because your audience has an experience with the stuff you make, and we care about that. Right. We'll have to talk about user experience design and our interface and how we talk to the player later, because we're going to focus on this. Our other series, Design Workshop, has been hard at work making this square do what the square does. And right now, it's in pre-game. In other words, we set it up so that we could do something cool like be in pre-game, be in the game, or be in post-game. Where if we're in post-game or we're in pre-game, this win square doesn't do anything. But we've already implemented the shrinking part. When we are in-game, I'm going to click on this right now. Boop. It begins to shrink. And this is the speed at which it shrinks and all that stuff. Of course, it doesn't do anything to stop. So literally, as you can see right here, it's just going in negative scale, which is just going to go on forever. That's okay. What our workshop series is doing is same thing here, step by step, 1 hour at a time, doing small things to make this work. This game you see down below, Small Towers, was also done with small steps, just put together, right? You're not going to do it all at once. That's not a good way to do anything complex. And already, we've gotten, almost half of our game done because I can move around. Isn't that nice? This little player control stuff is half the battle. I mean, there's some interaction between this win square and the player that we need to deal with. And there's the interface with the user that we have to deal with. But, we're doing well. Just small steps. Okay, so we already looked at the rules of this win square on Design Chat. And I think we got it. We're going to, let our design workshop catch up. It's going to manage like a little bit of a delay before it goes from pre-game into game. And I think what we said was a couple of seconds. Well, let's be specific because we just talked about this. We could say ready, set, go. This would be two things. It would be doing something during the brief time. Here's the thing. Right now, this is a very simple level. Like, go to the right. Like, has to be level 1. It has to be the easiest level we have in our entire game, right? But after this, we can, make it more hard. We can put a wall in between. We can hide the win square over here, and it might shrink slower, but our character's going to have to go all these places to get there, right? We can make it harder later, right? But this is really simple. Yet, part of what we can do is teach the player the basics of the game. You're here, go there, win, right? Otherwise, you lose. And by the way, this thing shrinks, right? So we can teach the basics of what this game is for the player right here. And I think saying ready, set, go is a big part of it. We just said, wouldn't it be nice to clue the player in that they shouldn't be able to move yet? But they will. I think so. I think part of what we might do for this win square is talk about what happens when we do give the player some text. You'll forgive me if I just add some text. In this panel, we have stuff in the scene. There's a camera, the light, the character. There are scripts on it. and the wind square with one script on it right now. Maybe more later, I don't know. But that's all there is in the scene. You can see it here. It's pretty empty. You know, we can look around, but there's really nothing here. You know? And it looks blue and flat here simply because the camera was set to show a solid color back here instead of this background. That's all. So there are these things in the scene, and I'm going to add one thing to the scene. I'm going to right click. I mean, I could also come up here to Game Object. I'm going to right click here. It's the same menu right here. Same menu right here. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to look for a 3D object that is made for text. This is one, but I'm going to go to this old school one. Legacy, meaning old school. It's actually very simple, and I like using this. In fact, we use this for our sample scene. I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to name this object. I'm going to call it, I don't know, Ready, Set, Go. I'm not even sure what to call it. We're just goofing off right now. So we're just playing around with this. This is, in other words, testing or prototyping, because I'm just going to zero out where this position of this object is. I'm also going to just configure a couple of settings that I normally do with this kind of text object. I'm going to make sure it is in the middle center. That's where the text is, in the middle and the center of the object, which makes sense, doesn't it? And I will also align it to the center, sure. And I will also increase the font size. It's at 0 right now, which doesn't make sense. Well, right, but if I go to like 1 or 2, there we go. Now it's starting to make sense. Oh, it was actually doing something weird at font size 0. I'm going to increase the font size, and this won't be readable. I'm not going to do it like this. I'll go to 60, I guess. But then I'm going to shrink this. These buttons right here are moving, rotating, which I don't need to do or want to do. And scale. This next 3 buttons, these 3 buttons here, it's also possible to use hotkeys, W, E, and R. It's the same thing. And I'm going to be able to scale this, which is fun. I can grab it in different axes and scale it, squash and stretch in that way. But I can grab in the middle, click and drag all 3 of them like this, right? And what this did, you can see the numbers over here. It made it look crisp. Like the font size and the scale together work to make that easier to read, right? Well, it looks like maybe 0.2 is a good size, so I'll just type in these numbers here. Right? All right. I'm going to say ready right here because I anticipate to be able to say ready, set, go in 3 different, well, not 3 different pieces of text, but I will actually just change this text. I will say ready, then I will say set, and then I will say go, right? Sure. But right now I'll say ready. And I don't know, there's a better font. Maybe there's a bold. There we go. Ready looks awesome. Should we do it bold and italic? Oh, we're so styling. Look how styling. We can make it a different color, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But you know, I'm just going to play with it right now to see what happens when I like move it up. Oh, it's perspective. Oh, move it back. Okay. It's interesting that even though it's totally behind, it is totally behind. Right? You see this? It's behind, and yet I can still read it. It's like showing through the color thing and not through our character. That's weird, right? Yeah, it's behind the character, but not behind this other one. I think it has to do with the material that we decided to use for this. That's probably okay. I mean, I don't know what this wind square will look like, but for now, let's assume it is a temporary material. And let's further assume that maybe we don't want it to be behind. Maybe we want it to be in front, right? At least so that, I'll say -1, I guess. At least so that if it's in front of the character, it makes a little more sense like that, yeah? Now we could do fancy things. We could absolutely have it move towards the camera when it's saying ready and fading out and all kinds of stuff, right? But I think this is okay. It's representing what we're thinking about. It's like we're just moving things around on a tabletop and just pretending, right? That's what we're doing. We're playing around. We're pretending. We're looking to see what this looks like, right? At the same time, I could kind of leave it here for the design workshop and maybe they use it, right? Maybe we use it later, right? One way we could use it is to change this from ready to set and then to go, right? And it'll look pretty cool. We could make it disappear, I guess, and appear, playing with it, right? The way I did that was one of these components is made to just render it, and the other one is to actually just form the text that it will display, right? So it takes some text and then renders that text, yeah? Right. These two components work together. It is sitting on a game object that also holds these components and can be moved around, etc. Cool. I think saying ready, set, go is pretty cool, actually. And it will definitely help to clue the player in that they cannot move yet. In fact, speaking of turning on and off these components, could I prevent movement by doing this? Let's find out. We're just playing around, but I'm just wondering, like, if I hit play right now, remember I could move before? Ah, I cannot move now. Cool. I mean, that's good because we're going to suspend the player from moving for a little while. And then we're going to say go, right? In fact, let's do that. Here we go. We're here. The win square says pregame. And then we're going to pause while I set this to game. We're still paused. Set it to game. And I'm going to set the player character to be... Oh, I guess we wanted to... Hold on. Stop. Set it to pregame. I'm going to set the player character to not move. Okay. So, cannot move. And here we are in pregame, right? I'm going to pause. I'm going to set it to... I just tried WASD. I could not move, right? Now I will do this. And we are in game. And we have a character move script that is active. And I will unpause. And now I can move. Cool. So maybe this is a nice, clean way to suspend our character movement. I hadn't thought about that, but you know what? It works. And it's really easy. It's just a checkbox that the other script could use, in fact. Nice. Meanwhile, the animate script is still animating our character, like blinking and stuff. That's kind of cool. In fact, we could do the same thing with this, like show it or not show it. I like all this. This is great. So we might be just playing, but what we're doing is also figuring out pieces of our game that we kind of want, including the text that says ready, set, go. The character, the way the character might be suspended from moving. Nice. So maybe in the beginning, the win square talks to the player character and says no move because we are in pregame. And when the timer is up, it goes to game and tells the character move. Oops, sorry, that's the render thing. Tells the character, okay, move. And so it's in-game and moving. Yeah, I think that'll work fine. We could do that. So if we know this and we've been playing around with it, we can kind of feel like this will work okay. We have other things to work out in terms of like this win square, but there's a couple of things that could work pretty well. Let's write these down. We know that we like what's going on so far. This win square is shrinking. That's good. It does know about something called pregame, where the win square is not shrinking, and then game, where it is, and then postgame, where it does not again. So, okay. And maybe this win square is in charge of the whole game like that, right? It knows this, and then this, and then this, right? We still have to implement a couple of rules for this win square, like there's a little delay between pregame and game. But now we also have this text, right? Interesting thing that serves the purpose of telling the player, you cannot move yet, but you are going to be able to move. We say ready. It's working pretty good. I would say it's okay for now. We could say that this win square is in charge of so many things, right? But I think we've already decided, it's in charge of win and loss. And so far, we've only started working on loss, and we're only halfway done with it. So maybe this is already plenty of stuff for this one thing. This object here handles the character and takes in player input, WASD, and it also handles the animation of the character, actually it does quite a bit. This feature does the win square. It's going to do win and loss. It's already starting to handle pregame and game. I'm not even sure if this is appropriate for our win square. It kind of makes sense for now because we don't have anything else to deal with the game state. But, as we go forward, maybe this evolves so that the win square is separate and there's another tool that handles the game, perhaps, right? Game manager. Maybe. And maybe it's the game manager's job to handle the text. Maybe it's the game manager's job to handle whether it's in pregame or postgame or whatever. Maybe it gets a signal from the win square, whether they won or lost. But they can otherwise, record. Remember whether or not they won or lost. I guess. This is the thing that decides whether you win or lose. It's the goal, right? The goal of the game, right? Goal, object, I don't know. But this is the game manager, and it is remembering whether you won or lost. It could be in charge of restarting the game, or knowing what level you're on, right? I don't know. What number of level you're on or something? I don't know, right? Because we might have multiple levels, right? Like level 1 was the easy one, right? If this is looking pretty good, where we have the character moving, and it looks like the character, and it blinks, and it animates, and all this stuff, and it's moving, we're good. If this feature comes along and is able to detect when the player is like inside, so it can win, and it's able to detect if it shrunk all the way down to the player sized and then disappear so that there was a loss. This is a lot of feature already happening. It's a lot of rules already in place, and I think this is a lot. If that happens, we can detect win or loss, and that's pretty cool. This is a way to win, and it's a way to lose, and this could be in charge of that. That'd be good. But we've already come up with a couple of things that maybe are extra and maybe should be handled by another tool. If for no other reason than to just keep it simple. Like, this is already done because it was separate. It wasn't trying to do too many things. This already feels like maybe it's trying to do too many things, and so we might move this pre-game and game and post-game to something else, and that's fine. Maybe there is a game manager, and maybe the game manager is in charge of pre-game, post-game. Right? Maybe it's in charge of saying ready, set, go. Maybe it's in charge of keeping a little timer for that display of you won or you lost. Actually, this is a display, is not. We definitely want a display. And it can also record whether or not you should go to the next level. Yeah, this is like actually a list of rules already. This is pretty much a whole system. This is a feature. I think so. We started out with a simple game, and we're making more stuff. Is that okay? Yeah, actually. This is good. I mean, here's the thing. The player needs to know that they can use W, A, S, and D. The player needs to know that they can't move yet. The player needs to know when they can move. The player needs to know that they won. The player needs to know they lost. The player needs to know these things. These are needs. So far, we're not really addressing those needs at all, so we need something to do that. Yeah. Just sort of realize this is another thing we need here. It's the instructions of the game. Right? Hey player, you are the little guy. Use WASD. Get to the win square. Maybe saying win on the square is good, but I don't know that it's necessarily enough to address the need of the player wondering, hey, what am I supposed to do? Right? To jump in the win square or move into the win square. Actually, I like the word jump in. That's kind of cool. It's like a call to action, right? To jump into the win square is sort of like the whole idea of the game. Right? Jump in, start playing, jump into the win square. Our little guy is happy to jump in. Who knows, maybe that's the title of our game. I mean, it's better than no title. Right now there is no title. So what are we talking about? Well, maybe there's a new feature, maybe there's a new system with these rules where it's in charge of displaying ready and then set and then go so that our player understands they cannot move yet and then they can. In fact, this could be in charge of suspending the player movement and then enabling the player movement when it says go. Likewise, it can be in charge of telling the win square, we are in game. Actually, it could be looking at this thing. Yeah. Like the win square can have a reference to the game manager and be looking at whether we are in pre-game, post-game, or whatever, right? So it knows when to shrink and when not to shrink, So I think we have enough rules on this win square. It's kind of a lot of rules already. When we looked at it before, it was like 8 or 9 rules just to get the win square to do what it does. And we've got a couple of them in place. We're going to continue to work on it so we get loss done, and we'll work on win. But it's already kind of a lot. It's even more than the player character, actually. This simple game, still simple, believe me. And yet, it seems like we're discovering new needs of the player, where we really should address them. We really should find ways to address the player need, like how do they know what to do? How do they know what their controls are? How do they know what's working for them and what's working against them? I mean, these are critical questions. We know this. And I don't think we've actually addressed that, right? This was helpful. Make no mistake. Making a nice, cute character instead of a square is better. That's an improvement, no doubt. But it doesn't definitively answer the question, who am I, right? It's just helpful. It's supportive, but it's not definitive. By having other things support that answer is better. When they do press WASD and this begins to move, it will be clear. But until then, it would be nice to have support. It would be nice if the instructions were there at least to say, jump into the win square. Like literally, that could be the instructions. Like the title of the game is jump in, and then we just add to the win square. I don't even know if win square is an appropriate name because we just made this up, but is that going to make sense to, a player? I don't know. I mean, should it even be a square? My goodness, so many questions. Consider for a moment that hitting a corner is still going to be valid if you can get inside, right? Consider that when we put the win square in more difficult spots for later levels, we're going to be stuck with a square. I mean, I guess we could change the shape, but we would need to communicate to the player that, yep, this is still the thing. This is still the object, the goal object, yeah. Well, I like our stand-in name. Like, this is good enough for now, and if it needs to change later, that's cool. Jump in sounds like a pretty good name for our simple game. I mean, when we find something better, we'll change it, right? I like that we could be providing at least some understanding about why I can't move in the beginning and then things start moving, including me. Ready, set, go seems to be an appropriate and very common things for a player to get. Like, I'm understanding what's going on because it says ready, set, go. I realize it's a race. There's a time limit. This all makes sense. Like, this could really help, actually, to say ready, set, go. Like, go when it's 0, set when there's 1 second left, ready when there's 2 seconds left, right? In fact, there might even be a second before then where there's nothing. Maybe we need to change this to a 3-second start time. So there's a second, and then ready, and then set and go. And the reason I say that is because imagine you're in a level. It's a brand new level. We'll put the frame of the screen. Like this is your screen. And well, I really cannot draw a straight line with this tablet. It's so sad. But let's imagine our little guy and the square. Oops, the wind square. And this is level 1, right? No big deal. And now level 2. We can put little guy over here. We can put wind square over here. And we can put some, obstacles in the way, at least a wall or something, right? Heck, we could even do mazes and stuff, right? But at minimum, we need to say, like, get to the wind square, and they know to, like, make their way there before the time is up. Okay. Level, what, 3? We can put the player in a different spot, I suppose. Why not? Doesn't have to be on the left side all the time. Wind square, maybe it's behind a door. I'm just making this up. I don't know if we have doors or anything. But here's a door. How do we represent door? I guess we could do it like that. Does this make sense? I don't know. We haven't done anything but top down, so I don't know if that even makes sense at all. But key. And again, wow, there's a whole lot that doesn't make sense already because we haven't done anything like this, like picking up inventory and stuff. Yeah, but imagine, right? And I mean, I'm using this as a hypothetical to imagine why you would need to pause at the beginning of the level before you say ready, set, go. I say there's probably a second where you don't show anything, and then there's probably a second where you say ready, and then there's a second where you say set, and then we can go. And we can say go at the same time that they are, good. So we say go, and we're running. This is the game running for sure, right? Game is running here. But until then, there's a second where we say set, and a second where we say ready. Before that, there's a second where we don't show anything. In fact, maybe even more, because we're showing them a level they haven't seen yet. We have to give the players some time to absorb what we've just thrown at them. Maybe it's brand new stuff like a key, or a door, or a conveyor belt, or a buzzsaw. I don't know. Enemies. Who knows? And we need to give them a moment to sort of look at where they are. Again, who am I? Where am I? And if we change where you are because it's a new level, we need to give them time to have that answer for them. That's what this is for. That's exactly what this time would be for. So if we say there's going to be a game manager thingy in charge of saying ready, set, go, I'm saying let's throw in an extra second before then, because our player needs to have a moment to see where they are. If we give them a new level, that's what we should do. I think we should. So let's change it from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Let's have this game manager deal with this text and say nothing, and then ready, and then set, and show go for 1 second, and then make it disappear, I guess. Right? Seems appropriate. Negative 1 second. So it'll be blank, and then ready, set, go, and then blank again. Okay. These are just notes. But that means we need a timer, for sure. In fact, a timer that is running down, and we're doing different things based on where that timer is, right? Yeah, that's what that is. You can also use this display thing to say you won and you lost, right? Definitely want to do that, right? You win? Yeah, I think present tense is good. You win with an exclamation, yes. Yes. Now, if we say you lost, we probably should keep it low key and just say you lost without the exclamation, sure. But they need to know they lost. We need to be definitive about that. We'll have the character also be sad, yes. And if they lost, they can restart the same level, sure. I mean, we've only briefly talked about what other levels there might be and what's in them, but yeah, actually. I mean, we've already sketched out 5, 6 different features. In fact, this Ready, Set, Go thing is actually a set of rules right here. This is enough to say, oh yeah, this is a totally different feature. This is separate and apart from the win square. It just interacts with both player and win square and coordinates the rest of the game. At some point, we have to say, hey, welcome to this game called Jump In. You can use WASD. Jump into the win square. Ready, set, go. You win. I mean, all of that is got to be a separate feature, right? And that's okay. We got this. One step at a time. It's okay that we didn't realize that till now, and it's okay to add that because the player needs it, and we're trying to address the player needs, yeah? It's the design process. Meanwhile, our win square is going to do its job, right? The game manager can rely on the player stuff doing what the player does, and the win square doing what the win square needs. The game manager will do its job, which includes ready, set, go. It includes saying you win. It includes restarting the level if they lost, and going on to the next level if they win. Nice, yeah? This frees us up to say the win square might need to be improved, and we might need to add things to the win square. You know, if it was full of all kinds of stuff, that would be harder. Instead, we're saying like, actually, the win square doesn't need to handle the state of the game. That could be the game manager's job. Okay? So instead of, we'll just offload this. This part of the win square can move over here, and that's fine. We can make that happen. Maybe we'll do it after we complete this prototype of our win square stuff, so that we can, work out the other things for the win part of it. I think it's good that we already threw in some text to see what that looks like and, basically tested that out, even though it doesn't have any code in it. We can imagine, right? We can imagine it here on paper, and we can imagine it here in our scene, because we can say, ready. And then we can say, set. And then we can say, go. This is going to look great. That's going to look fantastic. I think it's necessary, too. I think it is a need the player has that we're addressing with this feature. Absolutely. When we come back and look at this in Design Workshop, we're going to have this here. I'll go ahead and turn it off, though, because we're going to focus on the win square. In fact, I'll turn off the player character, too. It's fun to play with the player. That's a good sign, by the way. When you're playtesting and you're just having fun and it's hard to focus on the test you're trying to do, that's a good sign. You do need to focus on the test. But, yeah, we're going to come back to this in Design Workshop. And we're going to see what we can do to complete this feature set, where we realize now that maybe this game state stuff actually belongs on a separate tool, because it's going to handle the feature of managing the game. Yeah. This win square will still shrink. It will still do all that. In fact, it's going to do a couple other things. But yeah. See, we didn't do any code at all. Told you. I think it's worth it to say we'll pick this back up and refer to these notes. In fact, I think we won by just coming up with an alternative, or, well, any game name, because we haven't thought of any name for this game yet. I think it's a win to say, oh yeah, we have a game, and it's called Jump In. That's cool. I like it. You know, it's better than nothing, yes? And if we find a better name, great. We'll use it. But for right now, we need a name. This is it, right? Cool. Actually, we don't jump in this game, so maybe that's confusing. Anyway, the point is, perhaps the win square is a hole, and we go through the hole to the next level. Ooh, ooh, ooh. We haven't talked about theme very much yet in Design Chat, but that's a good topic. It helps us make decisions. It helps us make really good decisions in line with what the player needs. When you have a theme you can use, it is a tool to help us make decisions easily. Yeah, we'll talk about that. In the meantime, this has been Design Chat. What we have done is, well, we've realized more needs that the player has for our little game that we are currently calling Jump In. In fact, one of the needs was, what do we call this thing? What does the player call this thing? What is this experience called? And we say, oh, it's called Jump In. It's a game we made. If you're interested in watching a cartoon ape play games, that's fine. If you want to play this game down below called Small Towers, that's cool too. If you want to make game art, game code, if you want to make a whole game, you want to design games, you want to understand more of the process of game design, then follow and be notified, because that's what we do here. If you do show up, please use Command-Tie. Command-Tie lets me know you're here, and I can say, oh, good, you're here. Okay, let's get to it. In the meantime, have fun, do well, be good, stay safe. See ya.